The video game industry is in a new golden age of prosperity, we're told. Thanks to the pixel-pushing power of the 360 and the PS3, games have never looked better or been bigger, while Nintendo's little white miracle machine is turning everybody's grandma, uncle, and baby sister into newly minted gamers. Times are good, we're told. Guys, I just don't know. No denying all that stuff is true, and I've touted a lot of it myself, but I can't help but feel something in the wind. Not the EA is ruining the industry something, or the casual Wii games will be the death of us something, just, I don't know, something. Now, maybe I'm just a cynical old bastard. Maybe. But I can't shake the feeling that we're heading for something bad, something we don't want to happen, and that we won't see it until it's too late. I think I can explain my hunch, but it's going to take a short history lesson. One of an industry not directly related to gaming. I'm going to ask for your indulgence with the assurance that I'm either going to eventually make a lot of sense or fail to make sense and compensate with more stills of Italian porn stars. So, okay, here goes. In the mid-1980s, the comic book industry was in the midst of one of its largest periods of growth, wealth, and cultural influence. Connections to Saturday morning TV and the action figure boom, coupled with the advent of blockbuster series like the X-Men, had the industry sitting pretty. It was also a period of creative flexing, as publishers realized that the generation of loyal readers who had come on board after the industry's 1960s rise from the ashes were now reaching adulthood and would welcome and reward more challenging, more mature-themed material. Okay, brief sidebar here, because right now there's like an army of indie comics fundamentalists who are looking to beat me over the head with a rolled-up Scott Pilgrim for not qualifying this, so here goes. Yes, I'm using the broad term comic book industry, even though I'm only talking about mainstream superhero books published by the big two. Why? Because that's what everyone means when they say comic book industry. I know this, so do you. Yes, it's not ideal. Yes, I'm quite positive your pull list is infinitely hipper than mine, but cut a guy some slack, okay? This is a blog, I'm making a point. This all added up to a seismic shift in the year 1986, which saw the start of publication for a pair of books that would change the entire business: Alan Moore's Watchmen and Frank Miller's Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. They didn't just share a year, they shared certain themes and elements. Both were set in dark, alternate history worlds. Both used superhero iconography as a societal critique. Both brought a new level of depth and literary prowess previously unheard of to the medium. And both base themselves in familiar territory. Miller's book is about an elderly Batman coming out of retirement to fight crime, a corrupt government, and ultimately its puppet, a weaponized, morally compromised Superman. Moore's book used reconfigured Charlton Comics characters to imagine a world where costumed heroes had been real and how fucked up things were as a result. Oh, and sidebar, they were both extremely violent and explicitly sexual as well. Now, which of these fresh ideas above mentioned do you suppose was the most immediately imitated? Yes, though they were and continue to be lauded for redefining the narrative and intelligence of superhero yarn and what they could be, at the time the most immediate contributing factor of Knight and Watchmen were the inclusion of quote-unquote adult themes into the genre. So instead of taking Moore and Miller's cue to kick the writing up a notch, publishers mostly just started piling on the gore and the tits under a new industry-wide mantra: grim and gritty. By the 90s, it seemed like every hero was breaking thumbs and every villain had become a serial psycho or a mass murderer rather than a master crook or a world conqueror. Batman was stalking the dumpster slasher, and Spider-Man was occupied with Carnage, a bad guy seemingly born out of a dare to create a villain more one-note than Venom. You won't catch me saying that no good comics were published during this time, but grim and gritty 90s content wound up being a big part and parcel of an eventual downturn. To an extent, a lot of it was a byproduct of insecurity. Modern comics had never had more adult-age readers, but there was still this stigma associated with older readers enjoying what was still essentially children's literature as an adult. Packing the cape and cowl books with R-rated Gru, however, allowed less secure fanboys to come out of the closet. See? It's totally fine that I'm still collecting Aquaman. They chopped off his hand! That's fucking hardcore, bro! The industry grew fat and happy on the money of the older fans, who could afford the pricier books and the more exclusive merchandise. Soon, the books had moved from the ragazine rack in the drugstore into the comic book store, and hardly anyone was noticing that they were leaving the next generation in the dust. So you see, when the 90s boom imploded following a collapse in the collectible and speculator bubble, the industry got a rude awakening. In catering only to an inevitably shrinking number of older fans without seeking out new ones, the industry had quite literally sucked its own dick into an oblivion it has yet to fully recover from. Oh, you still can't get younger kids to read comics, by the way, unless of course they're in paperback, related to something on Jetix, imported from Japan, and backwards. But at least now the movies and the cartoons are keeping the characters popular. For now. Gamers, hear me loud and clear. This can happen to us. Right now, the cheapest of the 3 consoles will run you over $300 if you want a second set of controllers and a game. The cheapest. The other 2 are these big-ass home entertainment system behemoths that seem openly ashamed of being identified as toys. Most of the big games are either rated M or otherwise based on material or control schemes that don't necessarily interest potential younger gamers. Sound familiar yet? Guys, time for some self-honesty. Video games are toys. That's not an insult, it's a descriptive. And an item whose chief practical purpose is to be used for enjoyment is a toy. Doesn't matter how shiny and black you make it. It's a toy. Your PS3 is a toy. Your Wii is a toy. Your Xbox is a toy. When you game, you're playing with a toy. Deal with it. There's no shame in it. I love toys. Don't you love toys? Balls are toys. Do you think Kevin Garnett still feels insecure about bouncing one at his age? No. He makes millions of fucking dollars doing it. Games are toys, and like all toys, their foundational audience must be the young, the kids. Doesn't mean us older gamers can't still play with them too, but we must not be the only audience or the focus of attention, or we're going to lose in the long run. And right now, I'm sorry, I don't see where the solution is going to come from. No one in the industry is making any real effort to connect with the next generation in a personal, long-lasting way. Sega and Nintendo didn't put Sonic and Mario at the tip of the spear back in the day because they were big-time hedgehog fetishists or plumber fans. They understood that having a set of characters and stories that young fans would be drawn to even independent of the games proper would make even bigger and more devoted fans out of them. That's why they were called mascots. Who exactly is the Xbox's mascot? Master Chief? A personality-deficient metal suit with no face? Bad long-term strategy. Sony's mascot is, essentially, Blu-ray Logo Man. Neither company seems to give a damn about appealing to gamers under the age of about 17. Guys, that's incredibly bad long-term planning when you're making, yes, toys. The math just doesn't line up. Yeah, great. Your core audience will still spend plenty on your games for about 5 to 7 years, until college, jobs, family, and, adulthood put a big dent in how much they can spend. More than half of them will probably all but stop gaming altogether. See where that takes us? Keep doing the math and it gets worse. What's going to happen when more than half of that gaming audience stops gaming? Yeah, there'll still be a subset of hardcore diehards who will keep buying, but given how expensive we keep making the consoles, do you really think it's unreasonable to assume that the PS4 might end up costing $800 to $1,000 at its street date? And the skyrocketing production costs of the big-time titles that the audience craves, there won't be enough consumers to sustain the actual product in the eyes of its creators. And then the final variable. Sony and Microsoft, 2/3 of the total game companies, aren't even really game companies. They are massive multinational corporate empires with comparatively small video game divisions, meaning that if what I just described were to happen, and it will, they'd have no good financial reason to try and keep those divisions around the minute they become prohibitively unprofitable. No more PlayStation. No more Xbox. The only remaining company would be Nintendo, who can and will self-sustain, seeing no reason to keep 99% of the suddenly homeless third parties on life support, just out of the goodness of their hearts. Goodbye, Capcom. Goodbye, Konami. No more Solid Snake. No more Master Chief. You know how I knew when we were in trouble? When I started reading the back of game boxes and seeing next-gen shadow effects and amazingly detailed mapping laid out with greater prominence than the characters' names or even the basic story. Who's going to buy that wasn't already going to buy that? The industry cannot endure by preaching exclusively to the goddamn choir. This doesn't mean we abandon the long-timers or kidify every franchise, but it does mean it's imperative that the industry remember that they are first and foremost toy makers. Sony and Microsoft, this one is on you. Nature abhors a vacuum. It is not natural, nor is it good business for 80 to 90% of an entire consumer base, i.e. kids, to be spoken for by only one company, which happens to be your chief competitor, to both of you. Yeah, kids love the Mario, but a lot of them are ready to at least try another flavor, and you could be the ones to give it to them. Step up to the plate, think big picture, and give the next generation of gamers a reason to buy your console, or rather beg their parents for it. Oh, wait, what's that? Do I hear a voice from the back? What's that you say? Ratchet and Clank? Well, gee, you're right. There's one.